Swami. Śrīmad Prabhupada ki Vaishnava bring the king. Acharya Hare ki. Bring to go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta bring the king. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki. Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki. Mayapurna Dhama ki. Jagannath Puri Dhama ki. Shrimati Tulsi Devi ki. Bhaktivedanta ki. Shrimamaya ki. Yantara Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki. Shri Shri Gaurnitaya ki. Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki. Shri Shri Radha Ballabha Bhagavan ki. Entire Gopurananda. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. Glorious to the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to the assembled devotees. Oh, glorious to Shri Shri Guru Govinda. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 42, The Glories of Devotional Service. Madhvayat Vativatoyam Suryastapiti Madhvayat Sarvasatindriyo Jatya Agnir Mrityus Charati Madhvayat Madhvayat Vativatoyam Suryastapati Madhvayat Varsatindro Dayat Agnir Mrityus Charati Madhvayat
Madhvayat Vativatoyam Suryastapati Madhvayat Varsatindro Dahatyagir Mrityus Charati Madhvayat
Madhvayat Vativatoyam Suryastapati Madhvayat Varsatindro Dahatyagir Mrityus Charati Madhvayat.
Ladies.
Madhvayat Vativatoyam Madhvaya Devatoyam Suryasvati Madhvaya Varasatindro Dhyatagni Mrityushcharati Madhvaya
Madhvaya, out of fear of me. Vati, blows. Vata, wind. Ayam, this. Surya, the sun. Tapati, shines. Madhvaya, out of fear of me. Varsati, showers of rain. Indraha, Indra. Dahati, burns. Agni, fire. Mrityu, death. Charati, goes. Madhvayat, out of fear of me. Translation. It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. Out of fear of me the sun shines, out of fear of me. And the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. Purport by His Divine Grace Śrīmad Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, says in Bhagavad Gita that the natural laws being enacted are correct in all activities because of His superintendence. No one should think that nature is working automatically without superintendence. The Vedic literatures say that the clouds are controlled by the demigod, Indra. Heat is distributed by the sun god. The soothing moonlight is distributed by Chandra. And the air is blowing under the arrangement of the demigod Vayu. And above all these demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the chief living entity. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The demigods are also ordinary living entities, but due to their faithfulness, their devotional service attitude, they have been promoted to such a post. These different demigods or directors such as Chandra, Varuna and Vayu are called Adhikari Devata. The demigods are the departmental heads. The government of the Supreme Lord consists not only of one planet or two or three, there are millions of planets and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a huge government, and He requires assistance. The demigods are considered His bodily limbs. These are the descriptions of the Vedic literatures. Under these circumstances, the sun god, the moon god, the fire god, the air god are all working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Jakshena Prakriti Surite Sacharacharam. The natural laws are being conducted under His superintendence. Because He is the background, because He is in the background, everything is being performed punctually and regularly. One who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely protected from all other influences. He no longer serves or is obliged to anyone else. Of course, he is not disobedient to anyone, but his full power of thought is absorbed in the service of the Lord. The statements by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila, and under his direction the air is blowing, and the fire is burning, and the sun is giving the heat, are not sentimental. The impersonalist may say that the Bhagavatam devotees create and imagine someone as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and assign qualifications to him. But actually it is neither imagination nor an imposition of artificial power in the name of Godhead. In the Vedas it is said, Vishmadvata Parvate Vishodeti Suryaha. By fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind god and the sun god are acting. Vishmad Agnis Chandrascha Mrityu Davati Panchamam. Agni, Indra and Mrityu are all acting under his directions. These are the statements of the Vedas. Amagyanatimilanda Shyakananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhuvayevcha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So the topic is fear. Fear is a very interesting topic to discuss. And the demigods. Recently, I had the opportunity to be part of a gathering at Swinburne University. Is anybody here a student at Swinburne University? Is anybody? Are you? Oh, fabulous. I need to catch up with you. They're wanting to have a chaplain for the Hindu community at Swinburne University. And they've asked us as the Hare Krishna movement to actually be a tertiary chaplain there. So I need to speak to the students that are there, that we can make arrangements for different preaching programs and like that for the Hindu community, for the Indian boys and girls. So anyway, I was at this conference, and this professor who came from Sri Lanka, very nice man, came up to me and he said, "So you are with the Vaishnava Hindu community, Hare Krishna movement?" I said, "Yes, I am." And he had some idea about demigod worship. "So you are worshipping many gods?" I said, "No, actually, you're wrong in understanding that actually the Hindu faith has so many demigods and worships many gods. In fact, the majority of the followers of the Hindu faith are monotheistic. They believe in one God, and that God is Krishna." So he was actually quite surprised. And you know, this is generally the concept that a lot of people have about Hinduism. When I'm working within the interfaith community, they have this thought that somehow or other, the people from the Vedic tradition, those following Vedic tradition, somehow or other they believe in multiple gods, or you believe in millions of gods. And that's not a fact. Here in the purport here, Prabhupada clearly enunciates, and Krishna also says that they're working under my direction. So there is a management structure. Management is actually a very hard thing to do. To manage anything is a very hard thing to do. Anybody here is a manager? You're a manager? How difficult is it, huh? It's not easy. So management is not easy. Even the temple president here at one stage, before Aniruddha, Balaram Prabhu, wanted to enliven all the various departmental managers because we weren't doing our job properly or something. And so he organised that we all went to this seminar called 1 Minute Manager. Anybody ever heard of 1 Minute Manager? Yeah, so we all had to go to this seminar to actually pick up our management skills. So this was very interesting. And because his job is not easy, Aniruddha's job as the temple president is not an easy job. To be the manager of such a large community, not only do you have to manage things, but you also have to be spiritually astute and keep on abreast of your spiritual sadhana and so on and so forth. So it's not an easy job. It's a thankless job also. A lot of times people tend to criticize more than actually praise that person for having that job. But one of the things that a temple president or any manager really likes is that they have a good staff underneath them, a good management staff underneath them. That's really the saving grace. And Krishna can make that arrangement for a temple president, and here in this temple we have wonderful managers that are helping him in running this temple. So this is really interesting, you know, like Krishna makes the arrangement that a proper manager will come into the fore. Sometimes we see young people come into Krishna consciousness and we think, that person has management potential, and then we sort of direct that person to a particular service that they can really get their teeth into. I was a very young devotee when I was first asked to take on a management position. It was really quite interesting. I'd had some management experience before I became a devotee. I was running a small business, and at that stage we were making our money by selling candles. These beautiful candles, Hawaiian candles. The devotees would go around all over the place and sell these candles. That's how we made our money. So the first job that I got as a devotee was to work at the candle factory. So I was one of the people that had to dip the candles and cut the candles and everything. And I just saw that the process that they were doing was just like, my God, why are you doing it this way? You naturally start thinking, why it's not efficient? So, you know, I started to complain. And I went to the temple president and then also to my guru, Maharaj, at that stage. And I said, they're just not doing it right. I mean, it's just backward the way they're doing this thing. And so thereby, within a flash, they said, if you think you can do it better, then you do it. So within a flash, all of a sudden, I was the manager of the factory, and I had to make the improvements. Thank God it all went okay. You know? So from there on in, they saw that was working and that I had some managerial skills. And then we wanted to get a farming community, because the temple wanted to get a farm where we could have a gurukul and raise our children, and also cow protection and so on and so forth. So we had this opportunity to get this property way out near Mildura, far out along the Murray River. It was called New Gordadesh. And so they said, well, Bhakti, you were a reasonably good manager at the candle factory, we'll make you the manager of this farm. So I thought, okay. So I was managing this farm for a year, but under my management, I tried to do the best job that I could, but somehow or other I just didn't have the staff to support me, because I was a young devotee of 2 years old, and there were older devotees that were there, and they sort of didn't really see that this guy shouldn't be the manager, I should be the manager. You know? So they were working against me in some different ways, which was a little uncomfortable. To the extent where at one stage Bhakti was known as the Annie Oakley of the Hare Krishna movement. There was one time that I had to go and do Sankirtan to make money for the farm, and Bhakti was left alone at the farm with this crew of managers, or people that were supposed to be managers. And because I was gone, no one was interested in doing Mangalarti. Now Bhakti had to get into the house to do the offering for Mangalarti, and no one was getting up. So she got the shotgun out, and she stood at the Brahmachari ashram where these men were sleeping, and she started shooting them, and they came out running. What's going on? She said, get to Mangalarti, what's going on? So she was a good manager. Anyway, after Annie Oakley of the Hare Krishna movement. So anyway, after a year or so, I pleaded with Balaram Prabhu, pleaded with him, please get me out of here. I just want to come back to Melbourne Temple, just be a devotee in Melbourne Temple, you know. So anyway, I abdicated from that management position, but it wasn't long before I had another management position. But the thing is that we work in harmony with the temple president, and we try to do the best we can. Now the demigods are the best managers. They are the cream of the crop. They are the best, because they're totally surrendered to Krishna. They're completely 100% infatuated and surrendered to Krishna. And here it is mentioned that, and again sometimes you come up with these sort of people that are science orientated, that say, you know, yeah, but these demigods are actually just fictitious, they're like, you know, mythology, like you have Greek mythology like Zeus and Thor and so on and so forth, and it's just like that, aren't they? And I said, well, no, they're not. They're actual personalities that are actually controlling these different things, the sunlight, the moonlight, and the wind, and are departmental managers. And they sometimes think that science has a greater answer, but when you see the coordination of nature, of how everything is so succinctly coordinated, to think that this is all happening by chance is actually a nonsense. Who do you think in the 20th century was the greatest scientist of the 20th century? Who would you say?
Einstein.
Huh?
Einstein.
Einstein.
Tesla.
Tesla. You would say that. Generally speaking, it's Einstein. Einstein is the father of science, modern science, physics, and so on and so forth. Yet he understood that there was a controlling personality behind everything. He was a theist. He understood. He didn't have this understanding that everything was just happening by chance. He saw that there was an intelligent force, an intelligent person. If there's intelligence, there's an intelligent person. He saw that was there. So it wasn't a fantasy, it wasn't a mythology, it wasn't some superhero. It was actually a fact. These entities are there for us, and they work for us by providing the weather Sometimes they don't do such a good job in Melbourne, but what can you do? One day one is in charge, the wind is in charge, and the next day the rain is in charge, and then the sun is in charge, so every day there's something different here. There's a different demigod working his magic. And anyway, some of these superheroes, but at the moment there's this whole craze about superheroes, this fictitious and fantasy. And sometimes the demigods get lumped into this, but it's not a fact, they're real. It's an interesting story, I think I've mentioned it once before. You know how you have these superheroes, like Spider-Man and Superman? Back in the 50s, there was the first TV show of Superman. Anybody ever see the first episodes of Superman on TV? Remember? George Reeves was the guy's name, right? And it was a series. I watched it as a kid. It was great. I watched Superman, And this guy was so infatuated with being Superman that he actually took his own life. He started to believe that he was Superman. And he dressed up in his costume and he thought he could fly. And he went to a very high building in America and he flew for a little while and then didn't end up very well for him. So these are fictitious, but the demigods are real. They serve the Lord. They want to serve the Lord. And in fact, they'll do anything to be in association where the Lord is being glorified. There's that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Machitama Katha Prana, Bodhiantas Paraspadam, Kyantiantas Chamamicham Tashanticha Romanticha. Wherever the glories of the Lord are enunciated, there the devotees want to reside. So the demigods want to reside where that glory of the Lord is being chanted. And so sometimes, like this morning, we had this wonderful kirtan, and you can feel there's something special happening. Well, the demigods are actually with us when these wonderful kirtans are going on. And one incident actually that happened, which was pretty fascinating, with Srila Prabhupada in London, in Sevenbury Place. They were having this wonderful kirtan, and at the end of the kirtan, everybody was in ecstasy. And at the end of the kirtan, Prabhupada turned around to the devotees and said, "Did you see them?" And they looked at Prabhupada. "See who, Prabhupada?" And Prabhupada said, "Did you see Lord Brahma and Narad Muni were here?" And they all went, oh wow, Prabhupada could see the demigods have visited, because they don't visit that much anymore. They used to. Even a lay person back in different yugas could see the demigods coming at fire yajnas and very auspicious ceremonies and stuff. They would bless that yajna. And so anyway, at this stage, Prabhupada said, "Did you see them?" And so the demigods come when we have wonderful sankirtan, when we all have wonderful kirtan. And one devotee asked Prabhupada, "So Prabhupada, what was Narad Muni doing?" And Prabhupada said he was laughing. Narad Muni was laughing. Laughing? He said, "Yeah, Kali Yuga devotees." They were just laughing. So Prabhupada said you shouldn't remain a Kali Yuga devotee for too long. You have to develop your skills. So Prabhupada understood the power of the demigods. The demigods are really wonderful living entities that are here to help us. And when they get worship, when they get offerings, when they come to yajnas and when they're invocated, it's not that they take the glories, they pass it on to Krishna. Everything is always passed on to Krishna. But sometimes in our Hindu community, they don't understand that. They think that actually if I pray to Lord Shiva, that's it. If I pray to Agni, if I pray to Uma Devi, then she will provide a very nice marriage partner or something, And you can pray to the demigods. There's nothing wrong with praying to the demigods, but ultimately you have to understand that their prayer is then, the prayer that you've presented to them is then passed on to Krishna. Everything gets handed back to the boss to make the final decision. So Krishna is the supreme controller. But sometimes our fellow Indian community, they don't really understand that. They don't really understand that. And it's actually a fact. When Vedavyas Priya Maharaj was here and I asked him that question about impersonalism and worship of the demigods, actually the majority of the Hindu community haven't got a clue about their heritage, their Vedic heritage. It's just something, but they've never really gone into it. So when they come in contact with the devotees, all of a sudden everything clicks into place. Oh, that's how it's structured. And then from there on in they have the knowledge. So sometimes, you know, they have this understanding about, oh well, if I worship this demigod and that demigod. Prabhupada said that, and this is a quote, Prabhupada said, this is just poor fund of knowledge. Poor fund of knowledge. The poor person has poor fund of knowledge. But one thing that they do is that when they worship the demigods, they at least give thanks. You know, so they're appreciative, which is a very important thing. If they give that appreciation to the demigod, actually it gets passed on to Krishna, because the demigods don't take it on for themselves. They're simply the departmental managers, and they understand that everything is coming from Krishna, and they pass it on to Krishna. So this is very, very important, to at least say thank you. And a lot of the materialists don't say thank you. There's no gratitude about the life that they live. Generally, the materialist is not grateful that the sun is shining, is not grateful for the rain that falls, so on and so forth, you know. And this is the duty. For one to be connected with God, one has to be very grateful and thankful. So even we do it every day, you know, when we take prasadam. You know, before we take prasad, we actually thank the Lord for giving us this meal, this wonderful prasadam. Site.The, you know, and so this is really, really an important thing to remember and be grateful. Sometimes in my interfaith work, they ask me to give a prayer. You know, if we're having some communal meal and they've made arrangements for me to have a vegetarian meal, sometimes they ask me, so, Reverend Lange, would you like to give the blessing and the praise, the thanksgiving prayer? And in the beginning I used to think, well, what am I going to say? Do I do Sari-Rada-Vijayjala? You know, the senses leading to hell, will they understand what I'm talking about? So then I came across this little prayer that a devotee friend of mine wrote, and I use this one. I have it in my wallet all the time. When they spring it on me, they ask me to do a prayer, and I say, okay, I'm a soul having a human experience. I was born with no possessions, and I will leave this world with no possessions. I'm neither the permanent owner nor the ultimate controller of anything in the world. Everything that comes to me is a gift of the Supreme. Since food is the most basic necessity of life, I therefore offer this food with loving intention back to the energetic source from which it comes. In doing so, I honour the Supreme Enjoyer, the Supreme Creator, and the Divine Feminine. With love, sincerity, and gratitude, I will honour this sanctified food. So in a sense, it's very under the covers, and all the Christians and the Muslims and everybody goes, oh, very good. That's very nice. You know, so you have to, but in a sense, it's just worshipping Krishna. It's just offering this glory to Krishna. So this is really important. So Krishna provides everything that we need. Everything material is provided for us, you know, according to what our capacity is. We don't need much. As devotees, our mantra is simple living, high thinking, isn't it? We don't need big palaces to live in. We don't need big opulent cars or anything. We don't need to accumulate a whole lot of money. What we really want is to have association with devotees, to see the deities, to live comfortably, to raise our kids in Krishna consciousness. Mahatma Gandhi actually said this interesting thing. This is a quote from him. Take according to your need, don't take according to your greed. So in today's society, there's a real greed mentality. I want more, I want more, I want more. So this is not the case. In chapter 9:22 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, so putting aside the demigods, just worshipping Krishna. Yeah. Just meditate on my form, my transcendental form. So here we are worshipping Krishna. Then to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. So Krishna will provide everything that we need if we just surrender to him. Sarvadharma parijagya namakam saranamraja. I'll protect you, I'll guarantee it. You have nothing to fear. Just be really simple-hearted. So the Krishna, he is the controller. This is the point that's being made in this purport. Krishna is the controller. Krishna is the power behind everything. There's also another verse in the Bhagavad Gita The translation is this material, this is 9:10. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it's producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So Krishna is the source of all this. He is the power behind it. In the purport, Prabhupada says, it is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all activities of the material world, so he's, like it said in the purport, he's in the background, and that's a good manager, in the background, just working what's happening, making sure the manager's. He remains the Supreme Director. The Supreme Lord is Supreme Will, and the Supreme Lord is the Supreme Will and the background of this material manifestation. But the management is being conducted by material nature. So the demigods are actually the power, the working power behind everything that's going on. Now the interesting thing in this verse is that here we mention the demigods are working out of fear. Remember there was that whole section, Madbaya, 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 Madbaya. So by fear, Krishna is saying, fear of me. They are working by fear of me. So this is a different concept than other religions may have. You know, when we hear this, you know, if you're coming from a Christian background, you straight away think of thunder and lightning and the all-powerful God, you know. This is something that other religions, my God is easily angered, you know, and having this fear of this monstrous sort of God that if you put a step out of line, he'll just sort of rip you apart or something, you know. So that's not what meant by this fear here, this concept of fear. And it's interesting because when you actually analyse it, being brought up as a Christian and as a Catholic, the fear that's imposed on people is actually quite astounding. Because I remember when you turn 7, you have an opportunity, when we turn 7 in the Christian tradition, you have an opportunity. Are you from a Christian faith, Prabhu? No. From early Christian philosophy is that at the age of 7 you're able to receive communion, a sacrament. And the other sacrament that you have an opportunity for is confession. Now they have these sinful activities that are mortal sins and venial sins. This is how they used to have it. So mortal sins are things like if you missed out on going to church on Sunday, because you had to go to church on Sunday, that was a mortal sin. Now a mortal sin, if you're not forgiven from this mortal sin, you'll actually go to hell. Now hell is eternity of fire and damnation. So here you have the 7-year-old kid, you can imagine some of our little kids, right, telling them that if you miss out on going to Guru Puja one time a week, you're going to go to hell. So what we used to have to do is, prior to that, so there was this sacrament of confession, where you would tell the priest the sins that you had, and then you would be absolved of those sins. So that those mortal sins or venial sins would be eradicated if you just told the priest, I did this and this and I did that and that. Okay, my son, forgive it. You're forgiven. Say a couple of prayers and you've got a clean slate. So this 7-year-old kid is sitting there, and what they used to do is before you would go to confession in the school, you used to have to put your head on the desk and think about all the different sins that you've done once a month you used to go to confession. You used to sit and think about all the different sins that you'd committed. So sometimes I used to wags going to Mass. You know, my parents thought that I was going to church, and I'd be out playing marbles out the back, you know, and forget about going to church. Or I'd have some impure thoughts or actions, you know, and so these were mortal sins. And so I would be sitting with my head on the table, absolutely panicking, because I was thinking, I've done these sins, and will I make it to confession? If I die before I make it to confession, I've had it. I'm dead, doomed for hell. So these are sort of fear of God. So you have this fear of God, which is not healthy. And it instills a fear of God, and this is actually not the right thing. Apparently now, though, within the Christian and Catholic tradition, they've moderated that, and they're changing, which is great, because again, we can see how the subtle influence of Prabhupada's teaching is affecting so many different aspects of life and different religions. So this fear is a thing that is wrong. The demigods have a different type of fear. You also have, at the moment, different religious traditions. So if you're not following a particular process, if you're not worshipping a particular god, you are an infidel and you are condemned to hell. God's wrath will be put upon you, and you will receive horrible tortures and so on and so forth. But this is just not logical for a loving God. It's the creator of everything. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that of all living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. Krishna is the Father. Now, who can see a father taking out his anger because his child has done something wrong, and then throw that child into an endless, eternal situation of suffering, never to be able to be redeemed from that? So because I played marbles and missed the Sunday Mass, from that I have to, it's just not, a father is always forgiving and always loving. So this is the concept that they have, but the demigods have a different fear of the Lord. Their fear is out of respect for the Lord. They have such a love and respect for the Lord that they fear Him. And we can see that in a material sense is when you have a superior, either in your workplace, as a family, as a parent, as a teacher, authorities. In a sense, you fear your authority, your boss, right? It's not that he's going to hop down and smack you if you did something wrong, but you want to do the best for your boss. And that doing the best is a connection with him. So if you've been assigned a particular job to do, then you do it to your best of your abilities. And if you're slack, then you fear him because you're disappointing him. So in the same way, Lord Krishna is the supreme. He's the supreme controller. And the demigods are respectful to the point of fear. So they don't want to upset the Lord. They really don't want to upset the Lord. As it was pointed out in this report, they've been given this role of departmental manager because of their good qualities. And so thereby the Lord is entrusting them with a very serious position. And so they don't want to disturb that managerial structure. So this is very important. And they do their duty diligently. They follow to the letter exactly what should be done. So there are pastimes also we can see where sometimes the demigods are put into a state of amnesia for the purpose of a role or an interplay with Krishna. Like Indra, he didn't realize that Krishna was God, and he became bewildered by this little boy that was usurping him. How can this little child take away my jagga? He was becoming a little puffed up. But, ultimately, Krishna revealed to him that he was his controller. He was the boss. Oh! And Indra was very, very scared. And he came to Krishna and really offered his obeisances to Krishna. Lord Brahma also, and the same in the Bhagavatam, we hear how Lord Brahma also misunderstood that little Krishna was actually the Supreme Lord, the controller. And he made a mistake by taking the little cow boys and the cows. And then after he realized what was happening, oh my God, please forgive me. And so these are the great prayers that these devotees then. But this was a part of Krishna's Leela, part of Krishna. So he used those departmental managers for the purpose of explaining his pastime on earth and helping him in this pastime on earth. So it's not fear of wanting, so it's more a fear of not wanting to disappoint the Lord. Like even we have the situation, like when we were young, and we would have our school reports, right? You would make every endeavour to make sure that you had a good report to give to your parents. You didn't want to disappoint them. They're paying for your tuition, they're looking after you, And because you loved them, you did the very best you could, sometimes. And if you didn't, then you were fearful, but not so much that they would punish you with sticks or anything, but they would be disappointed in you. I remember one year I didn't do very well in a particular subject that was very important for my parents, and you could see that my parents were depressed because I didn't get a good mark. And that really upset me. And it was sort of a fear that I never wanted to see them have that sort of a reaction again to my report. And so I made sure I did good work. So this is the kind of fear that the demigods have got. Another area was, and we experience this now within this day and age, we have so many Hindu and international students coming to Australia. They're under so much pressure to perform and have proper, some of you here are those students that experience this pressure of not disappointing your parents. They have paid so much for your tuition here in Australia. Some families actually go into great debt in India to get their child here to Australia to study, and then they have to study very hard, make sure they get good results, and then they have to work part-time as well. And so often, in my work with the Hindu community, a child actually commits suicide because they can't bear to face their parents that they've disappointed them. And there are numerous occasions when we have to attend to a suicide because a person has been so afflicted by disappointment that they couldn't come to the standard that is expected of them by their family. So the demigods are entrusted with responsibility. The demigods are entrusted with responsibility to manage this material world. Even mundane leaders invoke a sort of fear. If you get an opportunity to meet, say for example, Barack Obama or the Prime Minister of Australia, there's a sort of a whoa, we have to really... Even here, when we had the Premier, Dennis Napthine, coming for the first time that a Premier of the state actually visits the temple, I remember Aniruddha and myself and Prabhupada, we were very on edge, make sure everything is correct. We cleaned everything up and re-cleaned it, and we had the best prasadam. So, we have this understanding that there has to be a level of respect with the aura of the leadership. So, respect is there. The police department also demand our respect. Different people in different authorities demand that when you are driving along and you're a couple of k's over the speed limit, right? And you see that blue light coming behind you, there's a fear. You're not following the authorities and this police is going to pull you over and he's going to write you a ticket. There's a fear. It's not that he's going to hurt you in any way, but you've disappointed. You've not followed the rules. It was really interesting the other day. In America, there is this epidemic of black men being shot by police in the States. And there was this one incident where this poor policeman, he pulled over this young boy, African-American boy in America, and because of the news reports and because of this constantly being on the news where an African-American person is shot, he got pulled over by the police, and this boy was so fearful that, the police was just pulling him up because he was using a mobile phone, right? He was using his mobile phone and pulled him over. And this boy was shaking, and he couldn't speak because he thought, now the policeman's going to kill him. And the policeman was just trying to console him. It's okay, you've made a mistake, you were on the phone, I'm not going to do anything to you, So there is that fear also. So fear is an interesting thing. The demons, however, don't fear Krishna at all. They don't fear Krishna. They don't care for Krishna. Even they understand that Krishna is dwelling within them. They don't care. They have a disrespect for Krishna. When you disrespect someone, then when there's an enviousness of someone, then this whole process doesn't work. Then you don't care and there is no fear. So the only thing that the demons fear is when Krishna appears as death personified. That they fear. but anything else they don't fear. So in the Bhagavad Gita it says that about demons, in chapter 16, bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in his own body and in the bodies of others, and blasphemes against real religion. This is the demoniac mentality. The demigods, on the other hand, fully respect the Lord. This is what's said in so many ways, understanding that they're just infinitesimal little beings compared to the Supreme Lord. Even the demigod is nothing but a small fragment of Krishna, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. That's us. That's who we are. Just a small little speck in this gigantic universe. And the demigods realize that too. They have a powerful position in a particular universe to do a particular job. But they understand also that I am nothing but a small, infinitesimal little spark. Prabhupada actually made this quite clear to one sannyasi devotee at one stage in America, who got a little puffed up about his position within ISKCON. And Prabhupada called him in. The devotees were complaining about this sannyasi who was sort of lording it over the devotees. And so he got this devotee into his room and he said, can you pass me my Śrīmad Bhāgavatam? Yes, Prabhupada. He gave him the Bhagavatam. And you know, on the cover of the Bhagavatam, it's the spiritual world, right? The first cantos of the Bhagavatam. You've got a picture of the spiritual. Tell me what's on the cover of the Bhagavatam. And he said, Prabhupada, there is Krishna Loka and there are all the different lokas. He said, what is after that? And nothing is beyond that. So what is before that? And he said, well, then there's the material universe. How many material universes are there? Oh, Prabhupada, there's millions and millions of universes. How many planets in these universes? And he said, well, there's millions and millions of planets in the universes. How many, in this universe, how many planets are in this universe? And he said, Prabhupada, there's millions of planets in this universe, and many, many galaxies. And he said, whereabouts in this universe is the Earth planet? I said, Prabhupada, within this universe, the Earth planet is situated here. He said, within this Earth planet, whereabouts is America? And Prabhupada, that's there. In this universe, America is this block of land that's here. And he said, in that America, where is Los Angeles? Los Angeles is this side of America, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, within Los Angeles, where is our temple? He said, well, it's right here in this little spot. Hey, man. Right here, just a little spot here. And he said, within that temple, how many devotees are there? He said, oh, there's many devotees. And he said, and where are you? And he said, I'm sitting here with you, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, you're very, very tiny, aren't you? He says, yes, Prabhupada. And he said, remember that you're always very, very tiny when you're dealing with other devotees. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. So we're very, very small compared to the vast creation. So this is the thing that Prabhupada wanted to stress to this devotee. So this is a very important thing. So Krishna says, we have to respect him and have fear for him. But then, in the same token, at the present stage, we're doing this Damodarastakam. Now what is that telling us? That in Goloka Vrindavan, nobody fears Krishna. In fact, sometimes Krishna fears the residents of Goloka. When Mother Yashoda is chasing Krishna with a stick, he's fearful. And she's not fearful at all. Come here, you naughty little rascal, I'm going to give you a smack. I'm going to tie you up. You know, this is the relationship, and this is that intimacy of Krishna, working with Krishna. So, there is a saying in Christianity that fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And to a certain extent, that's correct. When we first come to Krishna consciousness, we have zero amount of respect for God, practically speaking. We may have some sentiment, but we have zero, very, very small amount of respect or understanding of God, who God really is. We have some idea, but not very much. So when a person first comes to Krishna consciousness, number one, he has to be taught how to be respectful. He has to be taught how to be respectful. One of the most difficult things for a person to do when they first come to the temple is bow down. From the Indian community, it's a little easier. From a Western perspective, it's difficult. They won't bow down to anyone. Even in the Catholic Church, we used to have to genuflect. Anybody heard of genuflecting? Which is sort of, you go half down on the knee and you go whoop, up, like that. That's it. There's no, the priest may do obeisances, but generally speaking, you just sort of, okay. So when we first come, especially as Westerns, when they first come to Krishna consciousness, the idea of falling to one's head on the ground, what to speak of a full prostrate obeisance, is like beyond thinking. What the hell are you doing? What to speak of bowing down to God, what to speak of bowing down to another person, offering your obeisances to your spiritual master. It is such a difficult thing for a person to get in their mindset. So they have to be taught. We have to be taught respect. So this is the first thing. So this bowing down was a major thing. I remember, even now, sometimes you have an interfaith crew coming through, and you show them the temple room, and I come in first, and all of a sudden they're sort of standing beside me and going, "Where's Bhakti gone? He's bowing down. What's he doing?" And "Oh, am I supposed to bow down?" "Oh, no, I'm not bowing down. I'm not bowing down." So, it's so difficult for them to actually come to this submissive and respectful position. Just one point while I think of it. It was brought to my attention that we were doing Dhammadarastakam at one stage here, and Vedavyas Priya Maharaj came into the temple room. As much as we love him, there is a rule that while Krishna is being worshipped, you don't offer your obeisances to the spiritual master, or a sannyasi or someone coming through. That confirms it. You cannot do that. So just be mindful of that. Apparently when he came into the room, and he was a little late, and there was Dhammadarastakam going on, everybody stopped their worship of Krishna and bowed down to him. That's not right. Okay? Just as important. So, coming from a position of no regard, we have to remember that Krishna is the Supreme, and we are humble, insignificant little sparks of the Supreme. And so we have to have training. Sometimes even in my interfaith work, we go to different temples and mosques and gurdwaras and so on and so forth. I have to consciously remember that this is also a place of worship for my Supreme Lord Krishna. That they're worshipping him in a different way, a different modality, but still Krishna is there. And so I have to consciously say, I still have to be very respectful. Sometimes I get this sort of a thing where, well, it's not the temple, I don't have to be, but Krishna is there. He's taking their worship, whatever it may be, so I have to constantly remember that. So training is important for the new devotee when they come to Krishna consciousness. Very, very important. And remaining very much reserved in our dealings with both the Guru and with senior devotees and with Krishna. Just being very, very mindful and respectful in everything that we have to do in relationship to those personalities. There's not an immediate intimacy. Like say for example, you may want to meet the Prime Minister of Australia and you get an opportunity to meet him and straight away you go, "Oh, hey, Malcolm, how you going?" You wouldn't do that. So in the same token, it's with us when we meet the spiritual master, when we meet Krishna through deity worship, there has to be awe and reverence and respect. So this is very, very important. Great honour and respect. No buddy straight away. Eventually you will have an intimate relationship with Krishna. And eventually also perhaps your manager or departmental manager or your temple president will be very friendly to you and you'll have a good cordial relationship. So Krishna says that you have to be very, very respectful, both to Krishna, in the form of deity worship, to Tulsi Devi, to the spiritual master, to the Founder-Acharya, to your Diksha Guru, to your Siksha Guru, to your advanced and senior devotees. So you have to remain respectful. And that respect is, in a sense, a little bit of fear. That's the fear that's been invoked in this chapter here, in this verse. The other thing is we have to have a deep respect for the holy name of the Lord. This is our ticket home. the calling of the holy name of the Lord, this chanting of the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. That is the epitome of respect. Making sure you do that in a very respectful way. Because there's no difference between the holy name of Krishna and Krishna himself. This controller, this powerful personality that is controlling all the universes we've just been explaining, he encapsulates himself in the sound vibration of his holy name. So every time you pick up your beads, every time you go to chant, this is the invocation that you are inviting Krishna into your presence. You are with Krishna. You are connected with Krishna, and you should be so respectful. So when we chant, there has to be a real level of respect, a real level of honor, and conscious awareness that this Supreme Personality is manifesting himself in this sound vibration coming out of my tongue. Not that we give this a whimsical connection, in that, we lackadaisical about our chanting. That we chant anywhere and any time, doing anything, I'm washing the dishes and I'm chanting. Or I'm riding my car and I'm chanting. That's not necessary. We have to make our chanting time a very special time. That this is my communion, my connection with Krishna. That Krishna is actually there. And if we avoid that, or if we don't do that, yes, there is a bit of a fear that, we should be doing that. Because again, we're disappointing our spiritual master, we're disappointing ourselves because we've made a promise to the spiritual master that we would chant diligently. So we have to be very, very respectful. Sincerely chanting, with purity, with utter purity. And very quickly, what happens then is spontaneous love for Krishna develops. There is a loving connection. If we're really serious about Krishna consciousness, and we really take to heart, especially this chanting of the holy name, if we really diligently follow that through, then what happens is spontaneously love for Krishna starts to develop very, very quickly. And when you have that love for Krishna, it's amazing the power that you have then. Because you're part of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, when you actually get an opportunity to talk to other people, or just to be with other people, they want what you've got. They want what you've got. They've been searching so much, and they don't know what you've got, but whatever you've got, they want, because they can see the peace and serenity in your consciousness, in your being. And so this is really, really important for us to remember. And that love that you have for Krishna emanates in your being, emanates in your dealing with people. And it can't be faked. It's not a sahaja thing. Some people put on a show bottle that they love Krishna. Oh, Krishna, Krishna. We see them in India, and they put the peacock feather in there. Oh, Krishna, I'm dancing so nicely, and putting on saris and God knows what. But that's not real. That's fake. And people see through that. They see fake. People feel fake. So you genuinely develop a love for Krishna by respecting the holy name and really chanting the holy name with honor and respect. And so that will then manifest itself, and you have that opportunity to push on Krishna consciousness by that purity, by that connection. So we're part of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. I'm going to stop here, but I wanted to remind you that because we're all part of this Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement, we've got to outreach, we've got to reach out to more and more people. Today we have an opportunity for that. We have the Diwali festival in the city. A lot of our community will come, a lot of the Hindu community will come, a lot of the Western community will come. But we need to have some devotees there to lead the kirtan, to glorify it, to present this holy name to people, and to chant and dance with sincerity and with respect, so that they see that the devotees actually get so much joy from the chanting of this holy name, and associating with the holy name of the Lord, and associating with one another. So I'm asking you all, please, if you could possibly make it to Federation Square. Unfortunately, I can't be there. I've got another program that I've got to go to. They've asked me to give some lecture about the sacredness of Australia, and some professors and academics are going to be there. So I'm praying that I'll do a reasonable job there. Hopefully, in my job, I try to please Krishna and my boss by doing a good job. So I'm asking you, please, if you have the time and you have the inclination, please go to this function. Sukadeva Prabhu will be there and he'll be coordinating. If you can possibly make it, I'd really appreciate it. Any comments or questions at all, Prabhu? Can I? Yes, Prabhu?
Thanks a lot for such a nice class and such a broad vision for sharing this. Just from the personal experience, a couple of years back, I was very fearful because my parents are here and I just in a different temple. And I was not sure how I should respond to this temple because being in ISKCON for so many years. So coming back to the question, as we were saying that whatever we offer to demigods, they will offer to the Lord and then they will take or. So why we understand that we should eat only Krishna Prasad. So can you just comment on these two things?
When you go to another temple, can you repeat it just loudly? Basically, he's saying his parents are here from India, correct? They wanted to go to another temple. He wanted to know how to deal with going to that other temple, seeing the different deities and so on and so forth, and also the point of allowing prasadam. They may offer some foodstuffs, right? So number one, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, he clearly pointed out that if you're in another place, that you have to focus on seeing God in that other place as well. So say for example, say when I do an interfaith program and I go to the Shiva Vishnu temple. Now they have all the demigods. You name it, Lord Shiva is over here, Narayan is over here, and then Hanuman and blah 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 all around the place. And I really try to focus on giving my full attention and my respect to all the different deities. I don't neglect any of them. Because there is worship going on there, and Krishna is accepting that worship through the demigods. You know, even if a person is a Shaivite, right, and they're full on worshipping Lord Shiva, you can worship Lord Shiva, understanding that even the worship they're doing for Lord Shiva is going to Krishna. Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee, the greatest Vaishnava. So if you're, like say for example, sometimes I'm in an interfaith group and they do this chant, Om Namo Shivaya. I find that the most amazing chant. With the consciousness of understanding that Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee. You know? I mean, can you imagine being in the presence of Lord Shiva? I mean, it's just, and he's so close to Krishna, and he's such a dear servant of Krishna. When I chant that chant in the group, it's like I'm filled with joy of his surrender to Krishna. So you have to have that sort of an understanding. As far as prasadam is concerned, it can be tricky. Because sometimes they use onion and garlic and so on and so forth. So you have to be mindful. And sometimes if there is something that you can eat that hasn't got onion or garlic in it, and they've offered it in their own way, you can then also quickly offer it in your mind. My Lord, I understand that this hasn't been offered in the proper way, but please, my Lord, for the sake of, the situation, I will partake of this prasadam. Because, I mean, in the same token, sometimes we're in a situation like with your parents. Why aren't you eating this? Why aren't you? They can understand that you perhaps are a vegetarian. They can understand perhaps that you don't eat onion and garlic. But in the same token, if you're not eating anything, it sort of turns them off. And that's not what you want to do. You want to invoke a love and appreciation for what you're doing for them, right? So you have to be. Krishna will give you the intelligence to do it. Just like, say for example, I read that little prayer out. It was accommodating for those people, and they were very respectful of that. So Krishna will provide the intelligence. You don't break the principles, but in the same token, you don't want to disturb the minds of people as well. So you're very, very moderate. Sometimes I have to go to different places, and they offer me a meal. I'd like to come and partake. Brahma Kumaris, you come over and have dinner with us. Well, I can't keep on saying, no, I won't have any effect on them, or otherwise they're going to come here and say, no, I won't take your prasadam. So yes, we're in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, and Lord Chaitanya sometimes says, you have to take a risk. And I know that Lord Chaitanya is behind me, I know that Srila Prabhupada is behind me, and if I keep to a respectful connection, then, I do what I have to do. And I take a risk. So for the welfare of your family and for the welfare of encouraging your parents into eventually Krishna consciousness, you have to take a bit of a risk sometimes. Is that okay? Yes, Prabhu?
Thank you very much for a wonderful lecture. Shruti-Chari was here. Shruti-Chari, he was servant of Srila Prabhupada for about 2 years.
Yeah.
So he told the same thing to Srila Prabhupada, that I don't want to bow down again and again. Srila Prabhupada says, you have to do it. So do it anyway.
Yeah. I don't feel like it, but do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Well, you know, as well as I know, it's okay for you guys over here that are young and their bones are flexible and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, as you're getting older, getting down and getting up is getting a lot harder and there's a lot more surrender involved. Isn't it true, Prabhu? As you get older, you have to have a lot more dedication. Oh God, I've got to bend down again. Yes, my Lord, okay, I'll bow down. Oh, my bones, my ache. Is that true, Prabhu? You agree? Yeah.
The second point I was going to make, Albert Einstein was a real scientist and he was a devotee of Krishna.
What was that?
Einstein.
Einstein.
Einstein was a great devotee. And similarly, Isaac Newton.
Yeah.
There is a museum near London, about 90 kilometers. I happened to be there. There was who told about Newton's law,
Yeah.
first law of gravity,
Yeah.
and second, every action has a reaction.
That's right.
So they were all devotees.
He was actually an Aishtika Brahmachari. Did you know that? Newton was a Aishtika Brahmachari. He never had sex.
All karma.
Celibate his whole life.
Tesla too.
Huh?
Tesla too.
Hey! There's another plug for Tesla. Tesla was a pure devotee.
Next to him we have electricity.
I know. Yeah. He's an amazing personality. Got the Tesla car now too. But it's true. There are some amazing personalities, but a real scientist understands that there is a supreme controller to all this. It's not just a fabrication. It's not just happening by chance. There are controllers. And Krishna is the supreme controller, and he uses departmental managers. Simple as that.
Isaac Newton had made a model. I have seen that model, and he showed it to a friend. And
Oh yeah.
the friend asked,
The planetary system.
who made it?
Yeah. Who made it? Nobody.
Almighty Lord.
Yeah. No. He said to his friend, because they had the model of the planetary systems, and it was all rotating and everything. He had a crank and it moved around. And the friend said, "Wow, did you make this, Newton?" He said, "No." "Oh, who made it?" "Nobody." And the friend said, "Oh, get out of it. Somebody made this." He said, "No, nobody made it. It just manifested." And he said, "This is how stupid your understanding is, that the whole universe is happening so, but you can't believe that this model is not made by somebody." The guy was convinced. So yeah, thank you for that, Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada, one more, we've got time? Yeah, one more question.
Normally in India, people don't read Gita, they read Chalisas, Hanuman Chalisa or Shiv Chalisa. In Hanuman Chalisa, there is a line, or Devta Chitta Nadariya, Hanuman says, it literally means that you don't have to worship anyone else other than Hanuman.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how authentic those Chalisas are to
Keep encouraging them to keep worshipping Hanuman. But tell them that you'll worship Hanuman even better if you chant and add the Hare Krishna mantra to it. You'll be even more pleased. The thing we have to remember also as devotees, it's not necessarily that a person will turn to Krishna consciousness in this lifetime. But by your association and by your respect and by your affection and empathy and compassion for that person, our parents may not become devotees in this lifetime. But if you give an honest and pure connection, they will in their next lifetime, or the one after that. Don't necessarily see that it has to happen in this lifetime. Work for the future. So the person that's a Hanuman devotee, encourage them in that. Keep serving Hanuman. Keep working. Add Hare Krishna if you feel like it, but make sure that you follow the teachings of Hanuman properly. You know that Hanuman passes all the worship back to Krishna, back to Ram. He doesn't keep anything, but he's the humble servant. So some qualities of worshipping Hanuman are really good. And I've seen Hanuman Bhaktas. They're humble, they serve, they'll do anything. So this is really, really good. So you encourage that. You don't divert them from it. Don't worship Hanuman, worship Krishna. That won't work. They'll become, oh no, I can't do that. You have to encourage them and say, look, Hanuman would be really pleased if you also chant Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, because it's glorifying Lord Ram. Oh, okay. So chant a little bit. And then slowly, slowly let the mantra, let the mantra do its magic. And all of a sudden, their perception changes. Yes, I'm worshipping Hanuman as the pure devotee of Krishna. Okay? Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.